we're gonna walk through a little bit of tips and tricks for the NOVEL exhaust manifold on this RCF that we installed in Nevada. Our friend and partner, Bruce with Wheeler Motorsport, we had a customer in Nevada request that he do the installation. So here's a couple of tips and tricks that he went through to make sure that the installation is proper, especially for NOVEL owners. It is a little bit complicated of an installation. It takes a little finessing. So we'll just go ahead and get into it. So Bruce, why don't you walk us through the process of the installation? What did you remove first?
Okay, so once you drop the subframe, you're gonna have to remove the rack and pinion. And then from there, of course, remove the headers and engine support.
One other piece of advice, when you remove the rack and pinion, you need to lock the steering wheel. So don't forget that step as well. And the goal with locking the steering wheel and removing the rack and pinion and the subframe is to get as much physical clearance as possible. Because if you're thinking about installing this yourself and you're not a mechanic or a technician, don't. It requires a lot of finesse and patience. So unless you're very comfortable removing a rack and pinion and a subframe and tilting an engine on its side with a cherry picker if you really needed to, don't do it.
So installing wise, the trick is you have to install the runner one by one. Clearance wise, you're gonna have to make it fit before installing the collector.
So what's the order of that? Do you put the runners on the block first?
Yeah, on the block first. What we did first is the passenger side. On the passenger side, so basically first all from the front one by one. It's gonna be tricky on the O2 sensors too. You're gonna have to put the O2 sensors first before actually like putting the collector in. Then on the driver's side, it's the tricky one because the rack and pinion and the steering column is in here.
So this is also Andrew with Wheeler's Motorsport. He works with Bruce and they're kind of a combo team.
Okay, so when you're putting in each runner, it's kind of hard, or it won't be possible to put it in wrong because it'll only go in one way. Like if you put one runner in a place where it's not supposed to be, it won't even work. And then also too, there's a runner that you're gonna have to install first before you can even put in the next one. Because if you don't put it, install it and then tighten it fully, then when you put in the next runner, the bolt and nut is gonna be blocked by it, so you won't be able to tighten it.
From the rear of the car to the front of the car, do you remember which runner it was? Rough positions on those? Do you remember?
I believe it is the second from the back.
Second from the back,
Yeah.
okay. And then while you guys are doing the installation process, are you guys checking clearances? Because I know there is one runner that has a cutout for the steering column.
Yeah.
How do you go about that process to make sure that it's installed correctly? So Bruce is a little bit shy, so this is a little technical, so he asked me to just explain it because he's kind of shy when it comes to filming. So when you're installing the manifold on the driver's side, there is probably, honestly, the right way to call it is just trial and error. You're mocking up the manifold itself runner by runner, and then you need to examine inside to see what the clearances are before you tighten everything down. You begin by mocking up the individual runners first, all four, in a very specific order, as Andrew mentioned earlier. You have to do the second to the rear. That one has to be done first because you won't have clearance later on. Then once all four runners are in place and you verify that the clearance is correct, then you start pulling them towards the merge collector at the bottom. So that makes sure that you basically guarantee that the clearances that are established by the manifold and the runners are maintained before you start pulling it towards the merge collector. If you don't do that and you start with the merge collector, you may be misaligned up top on the block. And if you do that, then you could have some rubbing issues and some clearance issues. We want to examine the clearance just to show you what a proper clearance would look like from the manifold side. So Bruce is going to go grab a camera and then we're going to go take a look at it real quick just to show. And you can tell where the clearance needs to be because there's that individual runner that has a little cutout on it is designed to clear the steering column. So that's kind of the point of that particular piece. So let's grab a camera real quick and we'll take a look.
Different tools.
Yeah.
So when you install it, they were saying that you really need to have a variety of tools, like a smaller wrench just to be able to get the clearance if you are attempting this yourself. So Bruce right now is working on trying to get the wire cam up there so we can go take a look a little bit deeper into it because we really want to illustrate the clearance of this Gen 2 header. So as you're going through the installation process, there's like what I mentioned earlier about a trial and error kind of process. you kind of have to go through the process of each of the individual runners to see which ones that you'd have to do first for your clearance. It's kind of hard to explain, but once you're going through the process, you'll understand it. But you really do need to mock up this as much as possible. So what we really want to talk about is there's one runner specifically, and I'll put a little a video or a little text over it. But this particular runner sits very, very close to the steering column, and that's the type of clearance that you should be experiencing. Now, the scratches on that runner itself was during the installation process. As we had mentioned earlier, you're mocking it up and you're doing trial and error. So if you do have a ceramic coat, you're going to scratch it up a little bit trying to mock it up. But if you notice, there is a significant amount of clearance. The bottom part is the steering column, the top is the runner. So you can notice that there's a significant amount of clearance. So even with vibration and movement, you don't hear or have any kind of scratches or banging. But that's the most important conversation that we want to have. And this is the runner on that's near the steering column at the top point, not at the bottom.
This is the runner 4.
So this is the runner 4. Do you remember what you had to go through to install that particular runner, Bruce?
Actually, that's the last one you have to install. So basically, like I said, runner 1 and 2 you can install, and then from there you have to install all the hardwares for it, but just keep it loose. And then from there you could install 3 and 4. Then after that, you could install the collector, and once you install the collector, that's the time you could actually try to tighten the whole thing.
So basically, tighten it on the block first, so that it's in the correct position. Your clearances are established, so you know for a fact that the steering column or anything is out of the way. And then once that's locked down, then put the merge collector on and move each runner into its position.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the most important part of this video. You want to make sure that you bolt it to the block first, each of the 4 individual runners, ensure the clearance of each, lock it down, right? And then install the merge collector. And you're going to have to yank on the runners to put them into the merge collector's positions.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the correct installation. So that's what we really wanted to illustrate, was that clearance is extraordinarily tight. It is a Japanese product. It is going to have precision to this thing. And the car itself doesn't have a lot of clearance. So as you go through this process, you want to double check your clearances. Put it up, mock it up, check your clearances, and then lock it down. Once you've determined the clearances are good, then install the merge collector. Up there, the steering column, the steering column itself kind of pivots through the manifold itself. It kind of tangles itself all the way through. It's hard to see. Let me show you at a different angle. That's the steering column right there, that rod. And then if you look at it, it goes through. So if you see from this angle right here, that's the steering column right there, and it goes through, it folds itself through the manifold. So there's a this manifold has extremely precise fitment.
Yeah,
And
there's no room for error for this.
Yeah, there's no room for error.
Small angle difference would be like...
It's very Japanese. And so that's what we're trying to illustrate, is that there's no room for error. And if you do this, if you don't position it correctly and double check the clearances ahead of time, you are going to run into some issues. You could have the steering column rub on one of the runners and then have squeaking noises, or you can have vibration noises. But again, if you do this correctly and make sure that your clearances are established before you do anything else, you won't have that problem. And you can see right there up in that lit area over there, you can see it right there. That's up in that position right there. That's where you can see where the clearances are extraordinarily tight. And on this runner, it's hard to see, but there is a piece of there that is already carved out. You can see there's a little crescent right there. And that's done by the Japanese, by NOVEL, just to have clearance on that steering rack. So as you keep going up further, the tolerances get tighter and tighter. But like I said, as Bruce mentioned, all you have to do is make sure each of the runners are locked down on the block first. Double check your clearances, mock it all up, make sure you're good. Measure twice, bolt down once, okay? And once that's established, then you connect them individually to the runners individually to the merge collector. And that's how you get the install correctly. Now, the other couple things, make sure that you have this brace right here locked on. Will prevent vibration. That's another aspect that some guys will forget. There's 2 on each side, so you can see on that. And then one other thing, the tolerances are tight when it comes to this piece right here. So just for the customer's sake, Bruce added some additional spacers right here, just some single washers. You have clearance, but by adding it, you get a little more clearance, so you don't have any issues in the future for vibration. Every car is a little bit different, and every hanger is a little different. So You can also loosen some of these up so you can make your adjustments. So since it's done in this way, you could loosen it up, give it a wiggle, and then try to position it where you want it first. And then when you find the position that you want, then lock it down. This exhaust hanger should do most of the work for you, but if you find that you have tolerance issues here, you could always loosen this up to wiggle it a little bit, or push it up and then lock it down. And then if you want to be really, really strict about it, or really have some tolerance room, you could always add a spacer there. You can see that there's a bolt right there. There's no real issue to adding that whatsoever, and it prevents this from vibrating on there. That's pretty much.
That one's actually pretty common, even on different exhausts anyways.
Yeah, and then there's braces that you can purchase that you can replace that with as well if you want to add to it, but it's a 5-minute fix kind of a scenario. Is there anything else that you wanted to let people know about, Bruce? Tips and tricks on that thing?
Basically, that's it. Like I said, you just have to play with it.
Take your time.
Oh, spacers.
Another thing, this motor mount on the driver's side, there's a bolt protruding from it. The tolerance is extraordinarily tight towards the runner. So some people opt to shave it a little bit. It's not touching, but it's nearly touching. So just in case there's additional movement of the engine from the mount, it shouldn't vibrate, but if you want to be safe, you can shave that bolt down a little bit just to provide additional clearance. It's just very, very tight for what it is. You could also adjust the runner itself to try to get more clearance out of it, or you could shave that bolt, but both are equal ways to do it. But just keep an eye on it. So when you're doing the installation, driver's side motor mount, keep an eye on the clearance between that and the runner. So this is the camera, if you can see it. That's the motor mount bolt, and then that's the manifold. You see how the clearance is tight? There's still space, but you can shave that down if you want to be precise about it. But again, this is why we keep saying this particular product is very, very, very sensitive. It is very tight tolerances, so you need to finesse this a little bit and take your time so you can see the clearance on that. It's everything is just razor Japanese perfect. So the tolerances are extremely tight. So you can see it right there. Hopefully there's reflection, but you can see right there that that's the level of tolerance. All right, so that's it for this video. Hope that helps you guys. Just want to reiterate a couple points. This is not for the faint of heart. This NOVEL Exhaust Manifold Gen 2 is not easy to install. Even if you're mechanically inclined, if you're not used to doing this kind of work, I really highly suggest you take it to a professional. There's a lot of quirky things with this type of installation. There's an element of finesse that you have to do. So if you try to muscle through this installation, which most people will attempt it, get frustrated and muscle through, you're going to have issues with clearance, and you're going to have vibration and all sorts of other things. This is a very highly toleranced type of product. So find a local installer that you trust and do the installation there. And if you need a recommendation, you always reach out to us.